so privileged to be where I'm fucking at right now. People are willing to give me fucking hard cash to see us perform. And we're gonna build a community off of this. But with that being said, I have a responsibility. So lock the fucking out.
Well, welcome to In the Lab podcast, episode 24. I don't know if you've been paying attention. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, probably about a month or so. We kind of just regroup, regather, re-energize, yapping week in, week out is tired. No. We just, people's schedules got busy and, why not take a little bit of a break? Something we have to learn more as independent creators.
Facts.
It's just when to take breaks. So we thought, it's a good time and then come back to it, refreshed and pleasantly in this position to be joined by Mr. Tae Hauk.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
What is up, yo?
He's his own very talented rapper, songwriter himself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I've been thinking about the intro a little bit more now that I've had time. I used to just be like,
Yeah, the intro is always a little bit different.
what do I say? Yeah, what do I say even? But I'm getting better. I'll get there. Don't worry. Thank you for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure because when I first met you and had a conversation with you, I realized that it would be amazing to have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
You were asked before, but I think schedules weren't aligned and everything. I actually haven't talked to you in person before that. So it was actually nice to actually see you in person at that mixer.
Yeah, that was a really fun night.
Yeah.
It was hectic, yo, because I met you. I met a bunch of lab people.
There's a lot of people there.
MICO was there. That was crazy. I was watching, on the way here, I was watching the In the Lab podcast, like
with
MICO and Adit.
Yeah.
Both of those guys, so chill, yo. Adit especially, like, I hadn't really heard, I'd seen his work, but I didn't know, like, his face and stuff. So getting to meet, like, the guy behind it after knowing the work was really cool. And then I was like, bro, I need to get on this podcast. I ain't gonna lie. But yeah.
I appreciate your initiative as well. And yeah, I think right then and there, I was like, it would be great to have a conversation with you. You're someone, as a self-proclaimed yapper yourself, I think this will be very easy. So, we can get right into it. Basically, kind of go through my background before we start recording, but, kind of talk about how, where you grew up, how you grew up. You weren't originally from Toronto, so moving here as well, and then just kind of finding your place here in the music industry here. Kind of like, what was your background?
Yeah, so I'm from the West. So I'm from a place called Kelowna, BC. It's like a smaller town. Everybody, when I say I'm from Vancouver, when I'm from BC, they're like, "Oh, you're from Vancouver."
Vancouver, yeah.
Not Vancouver. So I just want to preface that. It's like a 4-hour drive, like mainland. It's very different. Like, it honestly, like, moving to Toronto has been like a culture shock in a lot of ways. I'm honestly not used to seeing Asian people. So being in a place like fucking Markham, where it's just a bunch of like old Asian people just chilling, I'm like, yo, this is like still so novel to me.
That's the thing I notice the most about people who haven't really been in Markham, Richmond Hill, is like you go in there like, there's so many Asian people.
Oh God.
I'm like, really?
Oh God. Well, even like where I'm around, like downtown, like kind of TMU area.
Yeah.
So many Asian people. I see more Asian people than white people on the street, and like for me, that's very, very novel. Like, in my high school, there were a few Korean kids, but like they were like from Korea, whereas I'm adopted and I was raised my whole life in Canada. So I had like basically no context. Like my parents don't know shit about like Asian culture.
What's their background?
They're white. So like they're like Canadian. So I grew up like I grew up in like rural areas, like in hockey rinks. My brother's a hockey player, so growing up, like we were always, every weekend we were going to like Kamloops or some like random buttfuck place to watch hockey, and I don't care about hockey. But that was kind of like my environment, and I didn't know anything about really my like cultural heritage, I guess, until kind of I moved here. It was such a blessing, like getting to meet like people who are in the creative field as well, because I didn't even really know Asian people made music like this or like did all these creative things that were like around my age in Canada. Like that was super cool for me.
And then growing up, you said like that was sort of your background. Growing up, you're used to kind of a very different environment compared to what it is here. How did you discover your love for music in that case then?
Music was like, so my dad, he plays in cover bands, he still does, and like literally like my first ever memory I can really think of is like watching my dad perform like The Clash. And that
shit.
was like, I think that like really imprinted in me like at an early age, like, oh, I guess this is like what a man does kind of thing. So I recently was like, ooh, I want to be a guitarist because my dad's a guitarist and like I really want to like make him proud in that way. I was in guitar lessons for a long time. I also took a little bit of piano lessons. Wasn't really fucking with it like at all. Which like looking back, I'm so glad my mom put me in those piano lessons, especially because it really helps like the foundation of like theory and everything. But it wasn't really what I was like. I didn't love it. It was just a thing to do because my mom, in the same way that like I played soccer and I played basketball, I didn't really love it, but it was a thing to do. And then I really started getting into like hip hop in probably like 7th grade ish.
Cool.
Like, and I got just obsessed with like linguistics and just like, yo, like it's so cool how you can say the same thing but in like a bunch of different ways, and rhyme schemes, and you can have rhymes inside the bars themselves. Like that's so cool. So I just got fucking obsessed with like old shit. Like I was really into NWA, Tupac, Biggie, Public Enemy, like that sort of thing, like growing up.
Old school hip hop.
Yeah, I also definitely think it resonated with me. Just like I always, like I was saying, like Kelowna is it's kind of a monoculture. It's a lot of people that come from the exact same background that kind of expect you to assimilate to a specific thing, in the same sense that even though I was from the same Canadian culture, because I look different, it wasn't perceived that way. And so I feel like I really resonated with like a lot of like hip hop's attitude towards like that otherness. And so from there, I had such a love for songwriting.
Wow. And wow, grade 7's pretty early too. I feel like I didn't really discover hip hop until like a little bit through high school. Probably like grade 10-ish, because I was that Asian kid playing piano,
I understand.
listening to classical music,
Okay.
a little bit EDM at the time. That's why I started producing. But I wish I discovered hip hop a little bit earlier myself, because that's what I resonated with as
I
well.
understand.
So it's great to hear that for you. So going from grade 7 to like going into high school, or choosing to like pursue, post-secondary like education, did a thought cross your mind that you wanted to pursue music in this kind of fashion, or was it always academics first and then kind of like letting the hobby be the hobby?
Honestly, like I was not like a model academic by any means, like until towards the end of high school. Like I think I just had like, I was very immature, like just like my brain was not fully developed type thing. So I was really bad at math. It was very hard for me to pay attention in class. I was very ADHD. So the only thing that like I saw myself being like any good at was music. I also started making beats in like 8th, 9th grade. I got like a Machine Mark III, which is like those like a drum machine kind of thing. And I was like, yo, like I'm gonna learn how to produce. I'm gonna do this, because I didn't really know what type beats were, and I knew I needed to rap on something. So I was like, maybe this is what I'll do. I was also like I listened to a lot of hip hop. Like it was probably the thing that I listened to the most, but I also listened to like a lot of like indie pop, a lot of indie rock, that sort of stuff. So I was like kind of trying to integrate that side of my musical taste. So I was making a lot of like indie music back then.
And this is all high school still.
Yeah, this is high school.
Wow. Okay.
And I was also very socially awkward, and then COVID hit, and everybody had to be socially awkward. Kind of. So there was nothing for me to do except for like write raps. So like that's when I think like the beginning, like late 11th grade, like 2nd semester was when I was like really getting into like, oh, like it's really hard for me to like tell this girl I like her, but if I write a song about it, then I can like kind of like hint at it type shit, and like it's easier. Like there was a long time I couldn't even put my hand up in class. Like I was super shy, but I could say like the most insane shit on a microphone and on a beat.
Okay.
So that was like it. I think it was always part of like my idea when I was getting into music, that like at the very, maybe not as a career, but at the very least, like this is what I want to be like publicly known for.
Okay. Wow,
Yeah.
that's so interesting. Okay. And well, from my understanding, you're pursuing a degree at TMU right now. What was the decision you made? Because that was something on your mind already, something that you kind of wanted for your identity, for something you want to be publicly known for, making that transition over from, high school to university, and being like, do I kind of make a career out of this? Like, do I go to school for this? Should I do something else?
Yeah, like there was like, I had so many weird eras during that like 12th grade period, because it's so daunting to be like, oh, like what are you gonna do for the rest of your life type shit.
Is.
Like
it's crazy that they make you make that decision.
No, actually, like I was so stupid at 17. Like I don't know what the hell I want. For a little while, I really wanted to be into film. Like I got into the film program at TMU, and that was like my first choice, because I loved editing at that point. Like I was on Premiere all the time. I had great video production class in high school, which like really sparked my interest. Great teacher that was like really inspiring me, so I wanted to do that. So I ended up coming here during like the summer, 11th grade summer, to like really kind of see the scene. I have a family connection that got me into some rooms with some like editors that like they work for like Netflix and all this stuff. So it was so cool, but ironically that trip made me decide I don't think I want to do this, because I just I saw how thankless the job was, and I saw that like kind of how good you have to be as an editor, and like all of like the minutia you have to deal with. I was like, I think music is like more my speed. I had like I was telling you earlier off camera, like I really want to get into philosophy too. So I got a U of T for philosophy, and that was kind of like the more academic path. But then I saw that TMU had like a music program, and it sounded like something that made sense for me, because most music programs I just at base level wouldn't be able to get into, because I don't know music theory like that. Like I'm not like a classically trained or jazz trained, and most programs require that. So this one was a way I was like, oh, I can go to university and I can get my degree and whatever, and like make my parents happy and have a plan B. But then most importantly, come to Toronto, where I saw it as like kind of like the big Canadian dream, I suppose.
Right. So you're kind of, your whole mindset was to get to Toronto.
100%. 100%. Yeah, man. I mean, love him or hate him, like Drake completely changed like the way hip hop was seen in Canada. Like from my understanding, like getting grants and like funding and stuff was very difficult before him if you were a hip hop artist. Like mostly went to like pop, country, folk. So that was like a big determining factor that made me believe, okay, like there really is an industry here. And then also MICO, honestly, because I remember being in high school and watching like his videos would pop up on my feed of him just like doing guitar covers, and they're going crazy. And I saw he was from like Toronto, and he kind of looked like me, kind of doing something around what I wanted to do. And I was like, oh, this is like totally possible. So here we are.
It is kind of crazy you grew up on MICO.
Dude, like, I don't know what was up like with like Virgin Radio, because in Kelowna we have like one pop station on FM radio, and like that's just like what I grew up on. MICO's Cut My Hair, when that shit was popping, it was on like every 4 songs, and like my mom knew the lyrics to that song, so like it was just like very 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 played. So like seeing like the guy that is on my Instagram doing covers to like being on my radio was like a pretty cool experience. Not to like fucking dick ride too hard, but like he's kind of the GOAT as far as I'm concerned for like our generation of like Asian representation. Super cool.
I mean, especially in his genre and what he's trying to, like his sound, his whole vibe, like
1000%. Bro, Senses, stop it, bro. That's such a good song. Oh,
I mean, he's on tour right now, so good luck on the rest of the tour.
Yes,
and
sir.
Congratulations on selling out a lot of your European tour. I'm sure that's in your path as well.
100%.
I can see it, man. I can see it.
I love live performing, bro. It's I need more gigs, bro.
I'm sorry I couldn't make it to your last one.
Oh, no worries, bro. It was like we also like it was a free show, so because of that, like, and the capacity was only like 300, so we sold out like this. So all good, bro. There'll be plenty of other shows, but.
Right, for sure. I mean, and kind of touching on like your love for live performance. Did you do a lot of that in high school, like talent shows or just whatever stage you can be on, wherever someone will listen to you?
Yeah.
Like, where do you discover that love for it?
It was like I was really like early on to like the business side of like, okay, how am I gonna monetize this?
Wow, really?
Yeah, like in high school, cause bro, I needed bands so I could like do what I wanted to do. Like I need to pay tuition, I need to like do this, I need to do that. Like if I'm gonna live in downtown Toronto, that shit's mad expensive. So I was kind of thinking about that through high school. It's like, how am I going to financially support this? And being from Kelowna, where there's essentially not a hip hop scene, like it just doesn't happen. Like I knew SoundCloud rappers, but I didn't know like actual people pursuing this seriously. So as much as that like kind of sucks, there's no infrastructure, it's also a huge advantage, because that means like you get to be a pioneer of an entire scene. So recognizing that, I realized, okay, people need to know me. The best way to do that is to like get popular, do some kind of publicity stuff. We had this during like 12th grade for me. It was like the end of COVID sort of. So we are like just getting back into like school in person. So we had this like Monday morning show where like It was mandatory. It was like really shit. It was like just like this 15-minute long video that we all had, every class had to watch. So I was like, what if I talk to the teacher that edits all of this together and I put my own ad in? And this is when my film and like editing skills really took a big role. So I got a big green screen. I did this like little like cheesy ad for my indie pop song, which is Why Don't You Come Over, my first song that I ever put out. I put a QR code on there to get like pre-saves and stuff because I heard that was a big thing. And from that, we got like 800 pre-saves, like just like that. Which at that time, like for Kelowna, had never been done. Then, like you were talking about talent show, yeah, we had like it's called it was like a battle of the bands type thing. So I got on that, and I was the only one who did original music. I was also like nobody. I'm pretty sure nobody there had ever seen like live auto tune, or like I was doing like automations on FL Studio.
Oh, okay.
So like just like trying to like do the absolute most. And then for that show, I put a QR code behind me for a show that I organized myself. So I found a venue. I got my like grandparents to be like the caterers and shit, like super like DIY stuff. And then we sold like 250 tickets for like my end of year show, and that was kind of like my first like big event. And that was like how I was able to like fund going to university and stuff. So that was also like a huge thing for me. Yeah. And then ever since then, I've been doing like one show a year back home in Kelowna. We did one August 9th, last August, and that was really fun. I booked out like the best, most high tech venue in Kelowna, which was like damn expensive, but it was so worth it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, first of all, that's crazy foresight to like understand that like you need to financially support yourself, especially going to university and moving, and then like, okay, what can I do? And leveraging your own talents and skills, and then also like taking the initiative to like go book out a venue or play a show and let that fund your goal and your hopes and dreams, or not hopes and dreams, but your dreams, to like want to pursue your careers and stuff. That's like crazy. What I was thinking about in high school was like, first of all, stressing getting into university, and then after I was like, what am I gonna eat for lunch?
No, facts, bro. Facts. No, yeah, like I was definitely like, not to like over-aggrandize myself. Like I was still a pretty fucking like normal kid, but I always knew that like if I'm going to get in this, I was always like a huge overachiever, which can be like to a detriment to some extent. But I was like, if I want to be like ahead of the game in every way, because I knew that I was coming from a very small pond where I couldn't compare myself to the people who were in the same lane in my location, because relative to Toronto or like literally like LA or anywhere, like it doesn't really matter. So the way I saw it, like if I'm not 10 steps ahead of people here, then I'm going to be 10 steps behind people in Toronto. So I was always kind of thinking like the business side of things.
That's actually, dude, kids are so cracked these days. I can't handle it. That's amazing. And also the other thing I want to touch on is the fact that you go back to your hometown and put on shows again. Because I remember talking to you about this and seeing this. We'll talk about social media as well after.
100%.
But seeing that you went to go back to your hometown to play a show, and obviously you were kind of in a different stage in your career at that point, coming back to your hometown, and also you're kind of creating like a platform for other artists. I don't know if they're just local artists or artists in BC in general.
Yeah, like there's definitely are quite a few like SoundCloud rapper type people that are like trying to get their foot in the door, but they have like I said, like there's no infrastructure for hip hop. There's no, like there is a scene, but it's not really popping like that. The culture, people go to like the 3 clubs in downtown Kelowna, and they don't go to like live shows really unless they go to like Drake in Vancouver or something. So since I'm essentially the only one that's built a large enough platform to get people in the door and paying to see us, like I felt like it is a bit of my responsibility to give these guys like a chance. With that being said, like there's definitely like I think like 8 openers for my last show.
It's almost like a festival.
Yeah, like literally, it was like let's get every single person in this scene, and there was like fucking like a screamo artist in there too. Like kind of like if you want to be a part of it, like let's do it. This is your chance to shine. Like this is and in the same sense, like there was definitely like a talent differential in terms of like some people who really took it seriously, some people that are kind of not like just more in it for the fun, which is no problem with that. But I really want to show kids that like it's very doable and it doesn't take a lot. Like I'm not like some like business guru. I was like a very socially awkward kid. I didn't really have much of a social network before I started like pushing music. You don't need that much to do a lot in a small community because it's very small. Like you have a huge reach.
Yeah, I mean, that's really commendable. And, that sort of perspective, I wish more people had. It's obviously really hard. And even you talking about like coming from a small pond as a bigger fish. And you're like, your perspective in that moment is like, I'm the biggest person here. I think a lot of people get like really big egos from that. They're not looking beyond to like, oh, they're big fish or bigger ponds and they go out. They're like, I'm the best right here. And they don't really go out to explore more or try to like even understand what that means in and of itself. So you recognizing that, not only leveraging that, but also taking the initiative to like, when you do go out to Toronto, like you want to be prepared. You want to be ahead of the game and not have to play catch up. I think that's crazy foresight.
100%, dude. I mean, and don't get me wrong, bro. Like towards the end of high school, my ego was like in full swing.
Okay.
Because I was like, again, like I had never seen anybody, never alone somebody who looked like me from Kelowna doing what I was doing. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna come to Toronto. I'm gonna take it over in like 3 years. Like, just watch me. And then as I like was landing and touching down in Toronto, and I saw all of the cars on that highway, and I was like, this is a lot of ground to cover, dude. Like, and then I won't lie, like first year university, I had like such like an ego death experience of just like, oh my God. Everybody in this classroom has been just as devoted as me, but they have been around way more influences that I have. Like I'm very behind. I didn't know about Afrobeat. Like I didn't know about all of these other genres. I didn't and like it really did like, I don't want to say crush my soul, but like there was a couple months where I was so lost. Yeah. And I'm also like a very seasonal person. So like now we're kind of getting into fall. Like I can definitely, I usually like have a huge like confidence spike through summer, hot girl summer and shit. And then like it gradually wanes down. I'm like, oh wait, I don't know what I'm doing. Like
a little bit of seasonal depression.
Yeah. Like it's all like the comparison starts getting into me. And I also think that that's like that kind of like ego death pushes me to create better music because it's also just me recognizing like, oh, it's time to level up. That's why I do love Toronto because there's just so much talent here. Yeah. And as much as like it can be hard because like you're making those like comparisons with yourself, which don't really add up to much constructive anything, but once you kind of get over that hurdle of feeling like shitty about yourself, then you can recognize like, oh my God, like this is such a privilege. I get to be around all of these creative people that are succeeding and like developing still or regardless. And I couldn't be more grateful.
Isn't it interesting that when you mentioned that there are a lot of talented artists and creatives in Toronto, that like Toronto isn't more on the map in the whole world in terms of like culturally about music and stuff? Like we're just so dominated by Weeknd and Drake. True. That, or if people even know Daniel Caesar's from Toronto.
Facts.
Okay.
Yeah,
don't worry. I've always found it interesting that Toronto still is in a city where like it's kind of a if you know city. That like people know there's talent if you've been here. They know how culturally rich the city is if you've been here or you know someone. But like for the general like population, Toronto's just Toronto. Like some big city in Canada.
Right. It's all relative though, because like I said, like in like fucking Kelowna, BC, bro, Toronto, when I tell people, oh yeah, I've been living in Toronto, they're like, big city. Oh wow, like you're gonna make it the big leagues.
You go to New York, they're like,
exactly, exactly, bro. No, yeah, it's kind of like everything's relative.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, something I want to touch on as well. Part of kind of the platform that you have been building up, you went viral. I almost saying recent enough. What was song? Sorry, I'm so bad with song titles.
All good.
I have everything written down.
The big one is The Problem.
Yeah, right. The Problem, and that is for the Break the Cycle EP that you're currently promoting.
October 25th. Yeah.
And shout out, check it out. Then, kind of the rhetoric or what you're talking about lyrically in The Problem is a lot of like socio-political issues that are kind of like plaguing our current societal kind of deal, and especially as Gen Zers, having to grow through it. I think it's something that honestly doesn't get talked about enough.
100%. That's like I said, like my influences growing up were like Public Enemy, NWA, like talking about the shit that you couldn't necessarily say in like any other context. And that's why I really resonate with hip hop. And I think that now that the music like has really become globalized, like rap music influences like K-pop now. It influences fucking country music now. Like it's become so globalized that I think we've sort of lost that part of hip hop. And I think it's kind of a pendulum. Like everything kind of moves in a pendulum artistically. So like we've been in this like clout rap era for a very long time, and it's starting to get old for me at least. And I also think that like the younger generation is not as interested to hear the same song over and over. So I think like I didn't really expect the problem to blow up like by any means. I didn't even intend to put it out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I wrote it in physics class in 12th grade. Just cause like I was like an angsty ass kid that was like, yo, like this is fucking bullshit. Like I'm going into university and like the cost of living is fucking insane. Like I don't see how I'm ever gonna pay these bills. I don't see myself ever buying a house. Like inflation isn't gonna slow down anytime soon. Also, like the end of the world is fucking near, like climate change. On my birthday, on my 18th birthday, we had like a forest fire in Kelowna. Half of West Kelowna burned down, and like half of my friends like lost their homes and shit.
Oh, shit.
And that happens every year now, and it's not slowing down. So like just kind of like living in that like super cynical perspective, I needed something to write about, and that's what the problem was. I put out a snippet of it just because I wanted something to post that day. And like that was like literally the day I was like flying out to Toronto. So I'm like, I turn my phone off airplane mode, and I just see like, what the fuck? Like I went from the biggest video I think had like maybe 1,000 likes to like getting like 2 million views. And that was like, what the fuck? Like I thought that I was gonna go in a completely different direction. I thought I was gonna be like more on that like clout rap shit, which I still intend to do. Like I love talking like the braggadocious side of hip hop and stuff. But the fact that people really resonated with like a totally honest like perspective, it took me a long time to realize why. It's like you said, like people don't really talk about this shit, which sort of blows my mind because it's literally everywhere. We're all being affected by this. Like the elections around the corner for both Canada and the US. I think it was crazy. I don't know if you saw the last debate. I thought it was crazy that in that like hour, 2 hours, they didn't really recognize like the drug crisis. Like 100 the stats that I like to use is like over 100,000 people are dying from fentanyl in the US every year. They didn't talk about that once. They talked a whole lot about like illegal aliens and like basically the same like immigration hate that we talk about in Canada right now.
It's the soundbite. It's the
article. Yeah, exactly. It's just like good buzzwords, but ultimately like I felt like both platforms failing to recognize that like is a serious issue from like a Gen Z perspective, because like I'm worried for like my future kids that like statistically they have a good chance of ending up on the street and like being addicted to all of these drugs. I have friends that are like way too young to be doing the shit that they do. And I feel that that's kind of what built that platform. It's just that relatability.
Yeah, it's a lot of the people realize that one, I think, and we don't like you shouldn't be judging people like when it comes to somebody that will actually talk about it, and you're talking about it in a creative medium as an Asian person looking the way you are, and you're spinning all these facts and it sounds fucking nice. People are just like, what the heck is this? You know, like it's so intriguing, it's so relatable. You're just hitting on everything that I think we really need to talk about, you know.
I hope so. It's also like one thing I always like to like say in my shows and stuff is there's a difference between like I'm a rapper who talks about politics. I'm not a politician. And I think there's a very huge distinction that needs to be made with like just celebrity culture in general. Because I, in a sense, at this point, because of what my platform is based on, I do feel I have a responsibility to be talking about world issues and things that are relevant in this day and age, because that's the whole point. With that being said, the last thing I want is to like feed into like the internet echo chamber of like basically choose left or right, and then you just kind of go with all of their policies. I think that's like such a redundant thing. It's so counterintuitive, because the people who are going to agree with you in the first place will just agree, and the people who disagree are going to disagree. Like what I'm trying to do is kind of start more conversation. I think we've lost that, not just our generation, but
in general.
In general, like politically, like debates aren't debates, they're just arguments now. And I'm trying to, it's very difficult in like comment sections to
Oh, dude, social media has ruined political discussions. I think it's like you can't have them online.
Yeah.
You just cannot.
Yeah.
Like you really have to be, and the amount of people even face to face that are willing to or informed enough or willing to have this conversation with you are
100%.
very few and far between, especially our age. I
Mhm.
think that's what's kind of scary.
100%.
Is our age group. Like, there's a reason why like when it comes to young people voting, why we're such a small percentage of that, and then we
100%.
have to deal with so many policies or politicians kind of not catering towards us, and we're kind of like, wait, that's weird. But at the same time, we're not voting for people that will stand up for us
That's what
or
I'm saying.
have the same mindset that we do.
100%. Yeah, just getting Gen Z more involved in politics. I think to do that, it starts with media because we live in a very media centric era. And so we need that media to be representing our actual issues. Because I will argue that like basically everybody my age like kind of hates the government, but like we don't vote.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
I know, that's so weird. Like we complain about like Doug Ford, for example, like our premier, but it's just like if you look at the one of the lowest voter turnouts in history for like a provincial election. It's just like, it's really sad. You can't really complain about it if you're not going out and voting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the same sense, like that's why I think it's necessary for me to, because I low key I do really resonate with like kind of like the old head take on politics and like looking at like young people like, oh, they don't vote. It's like they don't care. And I use that in a lot of my captions. It's not that they don't care. It's that like they feel hopeless. Like we feel that our vote doesn't really amount to much. And so we have to empower young people because I at the end of the day, like when you look at, I'm pretty sure you have to be a certain age to even like run for certain government positions. So like our media has to be talking about things from like people our age. Otherwise, like it's just so far removed. Like when I talk to my grandpa, I love my fucking grandpa, but culturally, like we're so far from each other. You know what I mean? Like the way he grew up in Canada is not at all the way I grew up in Canada, right? And so having that like age differential in politics is very hard to translate ideas and to like translate like relatable content, I suppose.
Yeah, we really need, I mean, also like Canadian US politics are intertwined, but it's still very, very distinct differences
100%.
between us.
100%.
So I think also like you need such a niche pundit to like also come from our perspective, our cultural background, say their message in a way that resonates with us. Like, I don't know how you would like, there has to be campaigns on TikTok now where there's some like Gen Z Asian kid that just like, I'm gonna be the next like prime minister or some shit. Like, I don't know when we're gonna see that. We'll see it one day probably, but I think it would be nice to see it. It would be cool to see what form that takes. Actually, yeah.
That as I actually like later down the road when I'm like 40, 50, I do want to get involved in politics. I think that like, speaking of like the advantage of being from a smaller town, being like running for like Kelowna government is like actually like doable, bro. Like if I could be mayor and like actually enact change, I think that's like kind of like the next step. Like another thing that I want to do is as much as I like love that I have a platform on these things, like I said, like I'm an artist at the end of the day. I'm not necessarily the right person to be talking about a lot of issues. Like I have a lot of people like ask me like, oh, you should talk on this, and like I'm not well informed enough to be talking about every world issue in the world. Nor do I think that I should be overshadowing actual experts in these fields. I'm kind of like for 2025, like after this kind of the problem era, we're going to be switching it up a little and like doing some more, still talking about important issues, but in a much more subtle way. At the end of the day, like I love melodies, bro. I love top lines. People don't know I can sing. I'm like really excited for these next. I'm working on 2 other albums that are coming out for 2025, maybe 2026, and those are leaning in a completely different direction. With that being said, that now that I have sort of the foundation of like the problem and talking about these issues, I'm trying to get more into social change. Because as much as like I do see my branding shifting quite a bit, I don't see the problem as a super sustainable brand. I think it's very easy to get pigeonholed into this like it's kind of already happening with my page. Like it's starting to get repetitive for me personally from a creative standpoint to be talking about all of these things and taking such a cynical perspective on things. So yeah, like getting involved and like it's one thing to spread awareness, but if I can actually use like my platform to like actually change the streets of Toronto are not clean, bro. Like we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
The streets of Kelowna are not clean at all. Homelessness
Yeah.
is worse there than it is here.
Really?
Dude, homelessness in Kelowna is like it's gotten so bad. It like low key like makes me so sad. Like going downtown, when I was back home, back in August, like, dude, like we've completely given up. Both like as a society and like as like municipal government, like, and we don't even recycle. Downtown Kelowna doesn't recycle because we rely on the homeless people to just pick up our trash and just basically dumpster dive for us. Because they can make like a fucking dime.
Okay.
But the fact that like we've given up to the point where we rely on them for our city's infrastructure, like
that's pretty crazy.
That is low-key fucked up to me.
Actually, that's straight up outlandish.
Yeah, like it like kind of blows my mind. So I have like 100,000 followers on Instagram now. That's roughly the population of Kelowna. So if I can like actually have a platform to incite real change, like I think that alongside with the new brand will be kind of like where I see this taking me.
I mean, that's amazing, first of all. And yeah, I think I completely agree with you. I was kind of like when you were first like on my radar and I was looking at it, I'm like, I hope it doesn't get known as like a political like rapper or political artist, you know, like especially in this social media age, once you sort of like get put in your box, like you're stuck there.
100%.
This is what labels are going to be looking at. This is what like your audience is going to be expecting, you know?
For sure.
And I think it's really good to be aware of that and breaking out of that. I think I'm really excited to see what you have in store as well.
Bro, I'm excited to show it off. Yeah, I can't lie.
And, you know, also like talking a little bit more on social media marketing, specifically for music. What are your sort of thoughts on the landscape of it right now? Your sort of feelings, how it affects your own mental health, of course. I think as a young adult and trying to find your way in the world and also having like such sudden kind of like meteoric rise to with your popularity, kind of how is that change your mind? Has it changed your mindset at all? Has it affected you mentally? Kind of how do you feel about your place in it?
Yeah, it's definitely because everything I've done has been with like essentially a $0 budget, right? Like all of my content up until this point has been like me and like a friend who owns a camera. We go out, we go to a few random locations. We don't storyboard nothing because most of it's pretty simplistic. Like we just run our tracks, like one shot. I put captions on it. I edit all my videos myself. I try to keep to a fairly regular schedule. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like quantity over quality. And I think that whole ecosystem of like post, it definitely does affect me in terms of like creativity. Like there have been long periods where I don't even want to write new songs because I know I have to make content for them, and that like really does, yeah. And or like how am I gonna like even just like I'm writing a song, it's like how do I TikTokify this? Like what is the 4 to 8 bars that will work in the 15 to 30-second clip? And sometimes that's good because at the end of the day, like that means if I can get my message across and like really affect people in that 15 to 30 seconds, then that's a pretty effective hook or whatever. But in the same sense that when I'm negating like genuine creative ideas because they don't fit into that like tight margin, it can be like very harmful to like my creative self. So yeah, like just trying to balance that business side of me, which is like I said, like always been present with me with the creative side, because I think they're very different mentalities, and I try to have a balance of both. But yeah, like I would have never thought I've always had a lot of confidence in myself. Like yeah, like I think I see myself being pretty big in the next 5 to 10 years.
Like eventually.
But I didn't expect it to happen like while I'm in school, like while I'm working day jobs, like while I'm doing all of this shit. Like that was like very unexpected. I was like so down to just like be releasing like random singles that aren't like within any kind of brand or like, and just kind of doing what I do.
Yeah.
So to go from that to like one day waking up, it's like, oh wow, like 3 million people are just watching me now. And like they're like kids that are idolizing like my viewpoints and stuff. Like that fucking shattered my reality and I'm still like low-key in the midst of like getting back into like what do I actually want, you know what I mean? But ultimately, like again, like I'm in such a privileged place to even have a platform. Like I remember it being so hard for me to get anybody to listen to anything I said, like in any social means, because like I wasn't a cool kid at school. I didn't know how to talk to people like that. People didn't really even expect me to fucking speak English a lot of the time. So like going from that to having like people on the other side of the world hearing what I have to say and like messaging me being like, oh, like you affected the way I see the world and like all of these things, like I couldn't be more grateful. But with that being said, like I still think it's important for me to value my own taste over what people expect me to do.
Your creative vision, right?
100%.
Yeah. It's really important to value. And I think the hard thing for some people to juggle as well is like you immediately will see a drop off. And like once you start switching, because people are like, oh, I didn't follow him initially for this, or I didn't follow them initially for this.
They want you for one thing.
Yeah. And the real fans will stay because they appreciate you for who you are and your creativity. And because they appreciate your vision, so whatever you put out, they'll at least listen,
Yep.
And I think that's the scary thing for a lot of people. They would rather just keep the numbers up. They'll stay in that lane.
Which is like fair enough, dude.
Yeah.
Like numbers in a lot of ways, that's like your financials, bro. And I can't hate anybody on that for that, but
but your long-term happiness as a creative and stuff.
I will argue just from a business sense, long-term it's not gonna work out because if you're a one-trick pony and you box yourself in creatively with that, you're gonna burn out. Like I've already experienced that, and I'm pretty young in the game, so I've already experienced enough burnout to say like I need to be a lot more than just like the problem. It doesn't really feed me creatively at this point. That's why like I'm excited to have this EP just be like the culmination of all of this in this era, and then once it's over, we move on to something else. You know what I mean?
It's beautiful in that way.
Hell yeah, dude.
Being able to let go. A very Buddhist idea, I would say. But actually something I wanted to touch on, and we kind of move past it, or two things. First, you played a couple shows in Toronto.
Yes, sir.
You've also played shows back in Kelowna. Kind of what are differences for you felt in both cities? And also, specifically in Toronto, we like to talk about like the underground scene here and performing, kind of how you see how we can do better in Toronto, or some of the pros that we're already doing really well here as well.
Performing here versus there is so different because in Kelowna, it's such a novelty to have a hip hop show, especially from somebody that comes from Kelowna. Because again, like that doesn't happen. So when people come, people know, they don't even, honestly, like my Kelowna fans don't even know the problem. They fucking haven't really heard it. Maybe they've seen the TikTok, but they know like my first EP, Songs About Summer. They remember Why Don't You Come Over, like the song that I was promoting at high school. They know every word to those original songs. And I definitely like get a fucking ego boost every time I do a show there because it's like the OGs, right?
Yeah.
Whereas somewhere like here, like you really have to convince people to spend their Friday night at your show. There's about 20 other shows that they could be at any given moment, right? I also feel that Canada as a whole, I feel like has like a lot of like people are worried to like everybody's trying to look very cool. I do notice that in Toronto crowds, especially when they didn't come for you specifically. Like they are, even if they're enjoying it, they're not really trying to dance or like have much movement and stuff. And I kind of get that. Like I'm a kind of a shy person in those settings too. But getting people involved in Toronto when it works is awesome, but it doesn't always happen. Especially because like I'm doing my first like real opening set for Junie, November 1st.
Congratulations.
Thank you, bro. I'm so excited, bro. But I feel like that's gonna be such a different crowd because at the end of the day, I'm so used to everybody coming just for me and knowing the lyrics and stuff. So now I get to kind of be on the other side of it, or it's like people don't know me. They're really here for another guy. But let's see if I can convince these people that I'm also the shit.
Yeah.
It's a completely different perspective.
You can do it. Just a little bit of warning from my experience for these kind of crowds. They're a lot more, even more shy than you will expect. And we got a little bit of like, it gets a little more diverse because we're in Toronto. So it won't just be like, this is stereotype. Asians are a little more shy. And so when you come to like heavily Asian crowds, they're just, the energy is a little bit lower. They're a little more shy, a little afraid to show out. So I think you really got to convince them, or you really got to show out. Like you got to go 150% on stage for them to be like 80% in the crowd.
100%, bro. And at the end of the day, dude, like the first few Toronto shows that like I low-key like don't even like consider like real shows. Fucking like nobody was there, bro. And like I don't care. I was having so much fun. So it's like, like as long as I'm having fun, like you guys can fuck with it or not.
Yeah.
I don't really care. The fact that I get to open for like one of my favorite artists is like huge for me. And I also get the opportunity because he's like an R&B artist and I'm shifting towards like more R&B melodic stuff. I get to showcase like so much new music that I haven't really shown. I showed a little bit in my August night show back in Kelowna just because I feel like Kelowna has to hear everything first. But yeah, like I'm really excited for this set. Just getting to like really experiment with like a completely new crowd and see what kind of reactions are, even if they're low key. If I can see a little bit of a nod of the head, you know, that's a cosign, bro.
Okay,
that's huge. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's amazing, man. And other thing. Oh yeah, culturally, you know, you're talking about how like culture, obviously in Toronto, is so different from where you grew up. How did you? Was it very natural for you coming here to like kind of culturally fit in? Where kind of, I mean, we are very, very diverse, so I feel like it can be easy for anyone to come to Toronto and like figure it out and find their group and things like that. But for you, like you said, it was a little bit of a culture shock. Kind of in what ways? Also, what sort of things helped you kind of be more comfortable here?
Honestly, I'm like in so many ways more comfortable in Toronto, like from the get-go, because immediately getting into like, I won't lie, like I think most like minorities deal with this in Canada, but like so much internalized racism, bro. Like I remember growing up basically being told like minorities aren't attractive, you're not really respected the same way, like all of these things that are very subtle. In the same way that like my parents are white, they can understand it but they don't really get it. Like they understand why I feel this way, but they haven't experienced the same thing to that degree. My brother, he's a hockey boy with like blue eyes, blonde hair. Like he is built for Kelowna type shit. So me growing up in the same household as him, but then we get treated completely differently at school and whatnot. It really boxed me in. And like for a while, I was so like mad that I was Asian. Like I had so much internalized racism because all I knew about being Asian was that was the reason why I couldn't fit in. That was the reason why I didn't get respect. So having that, but then coming here and realize that it's actually awesome that I get to just be associated with an entire new culture by birthright. And so getting to meet people like lab people, bad kids, like all of these guys that were like kind of like me, having that sort of like very human identity crisis of like, what does it mean to be Asian? What does it mean to be Canadian? It really like made me, I feel that honestly, like Toronto, I identify more with from a cultural perspective because, like you said, it's like it's so diverse. Like I'll go on Subway. I love just hearing so many different languages because that's so new to me, bro. We have like AM PM here, bro. Like we have a club of Asian people. That is awesome. Like I've never seen that thing before. So
we have AM PM is. Bro, it's such a crazy.
People take it for granted, but like, bro, that is like huge.
Yeah.
That kind of representation and having like fucking like even like I don't know, this is kind of unrelated, but I think like the whole like ABB ABG like stereotypes are just like in some ways so reductive of like a culture, but in some ways the fact that we even get to like have our own stereotypes is kind of interesting.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting
because I feel like that's a relatively new thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I think the ABG sort of like Valley girl, like California, like West Coast, like Asian girl sort of vibe probably was a generation before us, but it was not popular. You know, because I've met for the first time like older, what you would consider like ABGs, and you're like, holy shit, they existed before. They actually existed before, you know? And it's just like crazy to, you know, see that and witness it. And you're like, okay, culturally, this has happened way before it became popular, but because now it's like it's a whole vibe. It's like a look, you know, like people want to be that. They want to like kind of fit that mold. That's very different. Yeah,
identity's a weird thing, man.
Yeah, it is.
I feel that again, like I feel in like more rural Canada, we like Asian people are like the whole model minority. You're expected to be like docile, not really, just kind of keep to yourself. So it's interesting to see those same insecurities, but how they can progress in a completely different manner. When I meet like SoCal Asians and whatnot, and how it's much more in the braggadocious and like trying to stand out in a way. But I feel that it's still just projecting insecurities, the same insecurities that like I've dealt with my whole life, but in a completely new fashion. I do feel that was why honestly gravitated to hip hop because like I needed a way to break that mold, and I had such an angst to it. So seeing different interpretations of those same human emotions is like very interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just kind of wrap things up because we're about to hit the hour, which is a very smooth hour, by the way. Yeah, as it was a great conversation. It's amazing talking to you. Sort of, what advice do you have for like upcoming creatives, or like people who kind of want to get started, and not just music but creativity in general, or people who also are kind of grew up in the same experience as you, like not really being able to like feel like they fit in or like fit the mold of what's expected of them, that's around them. Kind of what advice do you have for these sort of people out there?
I do see like, because like post COVID, I feel like there's just way more musicians in general, and I will say that, and to the extent I consider myself part of this, but make sure you have like the music down before you start putting out content, because I see a lot of people that are like grinding and even spending like bank on their content. Like, I'm gonna post every other day for the next year, and I was like, how many of those days have you been in the studio like making music? And it's like just not enough. I think that like it's very important to hone your craft and kind of continue your love for music before you get into like the business side of things, because at the end of the day, like if you really want to get it that deep into like the business side of things, like literally do anything else, like literally like do finance and then like have a music hobby, because the only reason why you should be sacrificing this much time, the music industry is fucking hard. Like the odds, like from a statistical standpoint, to like make a living off this shit in this day and age, fucking like
it's not great.
1 in a million, right?
It's not great.
But that's why it's worth it, because it allows you to have the chance at just doing something that's actually fun. And yeah, there's a lot of work that isn't as much fun, but you have to stay connected with that 10% of your life that's just like, I love being in the studio. That feeling when you make a new track and you're just like, bro, I can't believe I fucking did this shit. You can't lose that.
Yeah, I completely agree. In terms of, I think there are people who started off with a marketing background or a social media background that want to do music, and then they kind of have the platform already, and then they get to kind of experiment with this creative side. But you said you're an artist first, right? And for people who are artists first, like it's very important to like make sure that's your craft first,
100%.
and then learn the social media stuff
in
a bit. And obviously it's just as important. It is just as important. You want a platform, you want an audience, like these are things you do need to do. You can't just be an artist anymore, right? But I do agree with you that it's something that you definitely do have to like have confidence in and like hone your craft, even when you are at poppin', or maybe even if you are like still, deep in it. For someone like Ethan Lowe, for example, like he's someone that I know has been grinding up until he hit the point he went viral, and he worked even harder after, and that's when I realized, it's not, there's no stopping. You got to keep grinding, you got to keep working on your craft. It doesn't matter if you're successful or not.
100%, dude.
It was an amazing conversation with you, Ty. I appreciate you coming through.
Me, dude.
Thank you for the audience as well as listening, and I hope you guys picked up something and learned something. It's something when I sit on this couch, it's something I learn every single day, or every single recording session we do, and getting to talk to so many different people. And wow, really appreciate you guys. I'll see you on the next one, dude.